Inigo moved to the cliff edge and knelt with his customary quick grace. 250 feet below him, the man in black continued his painful climb. Inigo marveled. What a truly extraordinary adventurer this man in black must be. He was close enough now for Inigo to realize that the man was masked, a black hood covering all but his features. Inigo shook his head. It was a shame that such a fellow must die, but he had his orders, so there it was. Sometimes he did not like the Sicilian's commands, but what could he do? Without the brains of the Sicilian, he, Inigo, would never be able to command jobs of this caliber. The Sicilian was a master planner. Inigo was a creature of the moment. He stood now, quickly jumping to his feet, his blade thin, body ready for action. Only the man in black was still many feet away. There was nothing to do but wait for him. Inigo hated waiting. So to make the time more pleasant, he pulled from the scabbard his only love, the six-fingered sword. How it danced in the moonlight. How glorious and true. Inigo brought it to his lips, and with all the fervor in his great Spanish heart, kissed the metal. In the mountains of central Spain, set high in the hills above Toledo, was the village of Arabella. There was no work, the dogs overran the streets, and there was never enough food. As to Inigo's personal life, he was always just a trifle hungry, he had no brothers or sisters, and his mother had died in childbirth. He was fantastically happy, because of his father. Domingo Montoya made swords. If you wanted a fabulous sword, you went to Domingo Montoya. Inigo remembered exactly the moment it began. He was making lunch for them. His father always, from the time he was 6, let him do the cooking. When a heavy knocking came on the hut door. "Inside there," a voice boomed. "Be quick about it." Inigo's father opened the door. "Your servant," he said. "You're a sword maker," came the booming voice. "Of distinction? I have heard that this is true." Inigo crept up behind his father and peeked out. The booming voice belonged to a powerful man with dark hair and broad shoulders, who sat upon an elegant brown horse. A nobleman, clearly, but Inigo could not tell the country. "I am a great swordsman, but I cannot find a weapon to match my peculiarities, and therefore I am deprived of reaching my highest skills." "What are these peculiarities you speak of?" The noble held up his right hand. Domingo began to grow excited. The man had 6 fingers. "You see," the noble began. "Of course," Domingo interrupted. "The balance of the sword is wrong for you because every balance has been conceived of for 5. Clearly you understand the difficulties," the nobleman began. But Domingo had traveled where others' words could never reach him. Inigo had never seen his father so frenzied. The measurements, of course, each finger and the circumference of the wrist, and the distance from the 6th nail to the index pad. And on he went till the noble dismounted and had to almost take him by the shoulders to quiet him. "You will make me the greatest sword since Excalibur. I will beat my body into ruins for you. Perhaps I will fail, but no one will try harder. And payment? When you get the sword, then payment. I insist on leaving something on account. All right? 1 gold piece, leave that. But do not bother me with money when there is work that needs beginning." "Come back in a year," Domingo said, and with that he set to work. Such a year. Domingo slept only when he dropped from exhaustion. He ate only when Inigo would force him to. A year of the handle being right, but the balance being wrong. Of the balance being right, but the cutting edge too dull. Of the cutting edge sharpened, but that threw the balance off again. Such a year. One night Inigo woke to find his father seated, staring, calm. Inigo followed the stare. The 6-fingered sword was done. Even in the hut's darkness it glistened. At last, Domingo whispered. He could not take his eyes from the glory of the sword. "After a lifetime, Inigo. Inigo, I am an artist." The big-shouldered nobleman did not agree. When he returned to purchase the sword, he merely looked at it a moment. "Not worth waiting for," he said. "You are disappointed?" Domingo could scarcely get the words spoken. "I'm not saying it's trash, you understand," the nobleman went on, "but it's certainly not worth 500 pieces of gold. I'll give you 10. It's probably worth that." "Wrong!" Domingo cried. "It's not worth 10. It's not worth even 1. Here! The gold piece is yours. You have lost nothing." He took back the sword and turned away. "I'll take back the sword," the nobleman said. "I didn't say I wouldn't take it. I only said I would pay what it was worth." Domingo whirled back, eyes bright. "You quibbled. You haggled. Art is involved, and you saw only money. There is no more reason for you remaining here. Please go." "The sword," the noble said. "The sword belongs to my son," Domingo said. "I give it to him now. It is forever his. Goodbye." "You're a peasant and a fool, and I want my sword." "You're an enemy of art, and I pity your ignorance," Domingo said. They were the last words he ever uttered. The noble killed him then, with no warning. A flash of the nobleman's sword, and Domingo's heart was torn to pieces. Inigo screamed. The village heard. 20 men were at the door. The nobleman pushed his way through them. "That man attacked me. He attacked me, and I defended myself. Now move from my way." It was lies, of course, and everyone knew it. But he was a noble, so what was there to do? They parted, and the nobleman mounted his horse. "Coward!" The nobleman whirled. "Pig!" Again the crowd parted. Inigo stood there, holding the six-fingered sword, repeating his words. "Coward! Pig! Killer!" "Someone tend the babe before he oversteps himself," the noble said to the crowd. Inigo ran forward then, standing in front of the nobleman's horse, blocking the nobleman's path. He raised the six-fingered sword with both his hands and cried, "I, Inigo Montoya, do challenge you, coward, pig, killer, ass, fool, to battle." "Get out of my way. Move the infant." "The infant is 10, and he stays," Inigo said. "Enough of your family is dead for one day. Be content," said the noble. "When you beg me for your breath, then I shall be contented. Dismount." The nobleman dismounted. "Draw your sword." The nobleman unsheathed his killing weapon. "I dedicate your death to my father," Inigo said. "Begin." They began. It was no match, of course. Inigo was disarmed in less than a minute. But for the first 15 seconds or so, the noble was uneasy. For even at the age of 10, Inigo's genius was there. Disarmed, Inigo stood very straight. He said not a word, begged nothing. "I'm not going to kill you," the nobleman said, "because you have talent and you're brave. But you're also lacking in manners. So I shall help you as you go through life by leaving you with a reminder that bad manners are to be avoided." And with that his blade flashed 2 times, and Inigo's face began to bleed. 2 rivers of blood poured from his forehead to his chin, one crossing each cheek. Everyone watching knew it then. The boy was scarred for life. The nobleman replaced his sword, remounted, and rode on. For 10 years, Inigo studied to attain the rank of wizard in swordsmanship. He had it all carefully prepared in his mind. He would find the six-fingered man, he would go up to him, he would say simply, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." And then, oh then, the duel. Inigo had only one problem. He could not find the enemy. It never occurred to him that there would be the least difficulty. After all, how many noblemen were there with 6 fingers on their right hands? It was only after 5 solid years of failure that he began to worry. By then he had seen all the Balkans and most of Scandinavia, and had visited the Florines and the natives of Gilder, and down step by step around the entire Mediterranean. By then he knew what had happened. 10 years learning was 10 years too long. Too much had been allowed to happen. The six-fingered man was probably crusading in Asia, or getting rich in America, or dead? Inigo, at the age of 27, began having a few extra glasses of wine at night to help him get to sleep. At 28, he was having a few extra glasses to help him digest his lunch. At 29, the wine was essential to wake him up in the morning. His world was collapsing around him. He was in that condition when the Sicilian found him. The Sicilian had a dream. With his guile, plus the Turk's strength, plus the Spaniard's sword, they might become the most effective criminal organization in the civilized world, which is precisely what they became. But the hunchback was the leader. There was never doubt. Without him, Inigo knew where he would be, on his back begging wine in some alley entrance. The Sicilian's word was not just law, it was gospel. So when he said, "Kill the man in black," all other possibilities ceased to exist. The man in black had to die. Inigo paced the cliff edge, fingers snapping. "Hello there," Inigo hollered when he could wait no more. Look, we've got a piece of extra rope up here we didn't need when we made our original climb. I'll just drop it down to you, and you grab hold of it, and I'll pull, and... No good, the man in black repeated. You might pull, but then again you also just might let go, which, since you're in a hurry to kill me, would certainly do the job quickly. Inigo raised his right hand high. I swear on the soul of Domingo Montoya, you will reach the top alive. I do not know this Domingo of yours, but something in your tone says I must believe you. Throw me the rope. Inigo quickly tied it around a rock, dropped it over. The man in black grabbed hold, hung suspended alone in space. Inigo pulled. In a moment, the man in black was beside him. Thank you, the man in black said, and he sank down on the rock. Inigo sat alongside him. We'll wait until you're ready, he said. The man in black breathed deeply. Again, thank you. Why have you followed us? You carry baggage of much value. We have no intention of selling, Inigo said. That is your business. And yours? The man in black made no reply. He examined the man in black. A fine sailor, yes. A mighty climber, no question. Courageous without a doubt. But could he fence? Really fence? Please, Inigo thought. It has been so long since I've been tested. Let this man test me. Let him be a glorious swordsman. I have my breath back now, the man in black said from the rock. Thank you for allowing me my rest. We'd best get on with it, Inigo replied. The man in black stood. You seem a decent fellow, Inigo said. I hate to kill you. You seem a decent fellow, answered the man in black. I hate to die. But one of us must, Inigo said. Begin. And so saying, he took the six-fingered sword and put it into his left hand. He had begun all his duels left-handed lately. It was good practice for him. The man in black was also left-handed, and that warmed Inigo. It made things fairer, his weakness against the other man's strength. They touched swords, and the man in black immediately began the Agrippa defense, which Inigo felt was sound considering the rocky terrain, for the Agrippa kept the feet stationary at first and made the chances of slipping minimal. Naturally, he countered with Capaferro, which surprised the man in black, but he defended well, quickly shifting out of Agrippa and taking the attack himself, using the principles of Tybalt. The man in black kept advancing, and Inigo was aware that behind him now he was coming closer and closer to the edge of the cliffs. But that could not have concerned him less. The important thing was to outthink the enemy, find his weakness, let him have his moment of exultation. The cliffs were very close behind him now. Inigo continued to retreat. The man in black continued advancing. Then Inigo countered with the Tybalt, and the man in black blocked it. He blocked it. Inigo switched to Capaferro. He tried Benetti. He went to Fabri. In desperation, he began a move only used twice by Sankt. Nothing worked. The man in black kept attacking, and the cliffs were almost there. Inigo never panicked, never came close. You are most excellent, he said. His rear foot was at the edge of the cliff. He could retreat no more. Thank you, the man in black replied. I have worked very hard to become so. You are better than I am, Inigo admitted. So it seems. But if that's true, then why are you smiling? Because, Inigo answered, I know something you don't know. And what is that? Asked the man in black. I'm not left-handed, Inigo replied. And with those words, he all but threw the six-fingered sword into his right hand, and the tide of battle turned. The man in black retreated before the slashing of the great sword. He tried to sidestep, tried to parry, tried to somehow escape the doom that was now inevitable. He could block 50 thrusts. The 51st flicked through, and now his left arm was bleeding. You are amazing, he cried, as Inigo increased the already blinding speed of the blade. Thank you. It has not come without effort. Again and again, Inigo thrust forward, and again the man in black managed to ward off the attacks, but each time it was harder, and the strength of Inigo's wrist was endless, and he only thrust more fiercely, and soon the man in black grew weak. You cannot tell it, he said then, because I wear a cape and mask, but I am smiling now. Why? Because I'm not left-handed either, said the man in black, and he too switched hands, and now the battle was finally joined, and Inigo began to retreat. Who are you? He screamed. No one of import. Another lover of the blade. I must know. Get used to disappointment. They flashed along the open plateau now, and the blades were both invisible, but oh, the earth trembled, and oh, the sky shook, and Inigo was losing. Unthinkable as it was, the man in black was superior. Not much, but in a multitude of tiny ways he was of slightly higher quality. A final flick, and a great six-fingered sword went flying from his hand. Inigo stood there helpless. Then he dropped to his knees, bowed his head, closed his eyes. "Do it quickly," he said. "May my hands fall from my wrists before I kill an artist like yourself," said the man in black. "I would as soon destroy Da Vinci. However," and here he clubbed Inigo's head with the butt of his sword, "since I can't have you following me either, please understand that I hold you in the highest respect." The Spaniard fell unconscious. The man in black quickly tied Inigo's hand around a tree and left him there. Then he sheathed his sword, picked up the Sicilian's trail, and raced into the night. "He has beaten Inigo," the Turk said. Not quite sure he wanted to believe it, but positive that the news was sad. He liked Inigo. They were hurrying along a mountainous path on the way to the Gilda frontier, and Fezzik carrying Buttercup lightly on his shoulders. She was still tied hand and foot. "I didn't hear you. Say it again," the Sicilian called out, so Fezzik waited for the hunchback to catch up with him. "See?" Fezzik pointed then. Far down at the bottom of the mountain path, a man in black could be seen running. "Inigo is beaten." "Inconceivable!" exploded the Sicilian. Fezzik never dared disagree with the hunchback. "I'm so stupid," Fezzik nodded. "Inigo has not lost to the man in black. He has defeated him, and to prove it, he has put on all the man in black's clothes and mask and hood and boots and gained 80 pounds. The Sicilian squinted down toward the running figure. "Fool," he hurled back at the Turk. "After all these years, can't you tell Inigo when you see him? That isn't Inigo. Inigo must have slipped or been tricked or otherwise unfairly beaten. That's the only conceivable explanation." Conceivable, believable, the giant thought. Only he didn't dare say it out loud. Not to the Sicilian. He might have whispered it to Inigo late at night, but that was before Inigo was dead. He might have also whispered, "Heavable, thievable, weavable," but that's as far as he got before the Sicilian started talking again, and that always meant that he had to pay very strict attention. Nothing angered the hunchback as quickly as catching Fezzik thinking. If he had found out Fezzik was making rhymes, he would have laughed and then found ways to make Fezzik suffer. "Untie her feet," the Sicilian commanded. Fezzik put the princess down and ripped the ropes apart that bound her legs. Then he rubbed her ankles so she could walk. The Sicilian grabbed her immediately and yanked her away. "Catch up with us quickly," the Sicilian said. "Instructions?" Fezzik called out, almost panicked. "Finish him! Finish him!" The Sicilian was getting peeved. "Succeed, since Inigo failed us." "But I can't fence. I don't know how to fence." "Your way." The Sicilian could barely control himself now. "Oh, yes, good, my way. Thank you, Vincini," Fezzik said to the hunchback, then summoning up his courage. "I think I need a hint." "Wait for him behind there," he pointed to a sharp bend in the mountain path, "and crush his head like an eggshell." He pointed to the cannonball-sized rocks. "I could do that, yes," Fezzik nodded. He was marvelous at throwing heavy things. "It just seems not very sportsmanlike, doesn't it?" The Sicilian lost control. It was terrifying when he did it. With most people, they scream and holler and jump around. With Vincini, it was different. He got very, very quiet, and his voice sounded like it came from a dead throat. "Stop him, for good and all. If you fail, there will be no excuses. I will find another giant." He grabbed hold of Buttercup again and hobbled up the mountain path and out of sight. Unseen, silent, Fezzik waited patiently with his killing rock, counting the seconds until the man in black would die. He could hear the footsteps of the man in black coming nearer, nearer. Fezzik leaped from hiding and threw the rock with incredible power and perfect accuracy. It smashed into a boulder a foot away from the face of the man in black. "I did that on purpose," Fezzik said then, picking up another rock, holding it ready. "I didn't have to miss." "I believe you," the man in black said. They stood facing each other on the narrow mountain path. "Now what happens?" asked the man in black. "We face each other as God intended," Fezzik said. "No tricks, no weapons, skill against skill alone." "You mean you'll put down your rock and I'll put down my sword, and we'll try to kill each other like civilized people, is that it?" "If you'd rather, I can kill you now," Fezzik said gently, and he raised the rock to throw. "I'm giving you a chance." "So you are, and I accept it," said the man in black, and he began to take off his sword and scabbard. "Although, frankly, I think the odds are slightly in your favor at hand-fighting." "I tell you what I tell everybody," Fezzik explained. "I cannot help being the biggest and strongest. It's not my fault." "I'm not blaming you," said the man in black. "Let's get to it, then," Fezzik said, and he dropped his rock and got into fighting position. They engaged. Fezzik let the man in black fiddle around for a bit, tested the man's strength, which was considerable for someone who wasn't a giant. Then, when he was quite sure that the man in black would not go to his maker embarrassed, Fezzik locked his arms tight around. Fezzik lifted and squeezed, and the man in black slipped free. Thought Fezzik. That certainly was a surprise. I thought for sure I had him. You're very quick, Fezzik complimented. And a good thing, too, said the man in black. I don't understand a thing that's happening, Fezzik thought. Could I be losing my strength? Suddenly he knew. He had not fought against one man in so long, he had all but forgotten how. He had been fighting groups and gangs and bunches for so many years that the idea of having but a simple opponent was slow in making itself known to him, and suddenly he readjusted his style to what it once had been. By that time, the man in black had him by the throat. The man in black was riding him, and his arms were locked across Fezzik's windpipe, one in front, one behind. Fezzik reached back, but the man in black was hard to grasp. By now he had no air. Fezzik continued to struggle. He could feel a hollowness in his legs now. He could see the world beginning to pale. But he did not give up. He was the mighty Fezzik, lover of rhymes, and you did not give up, no matter what. Fezzik went to his knees. He pounded still, but feebly. I am beaten. I am going to die, he thought just before he fell onto the mountain path. He was only half wrong. There is an instant between unconsciousness and death, and as the giant pitched onto the rocky path, that instant happened. And just before it happened, the man in black let go. Fezzik lay sprawled, faintly breathing. The man in black made his way back to where he had dropped his sword. He put it back on. 2 down, and the hardest one to go. Vincini was waiting for him. Indeed, he had set out a little picnic spread. From the knapsack that he always carried, he had taken a small handkerchief, and on it he had placed 2 wine goblets. In the center was a small leather wine holder, and beside it some cheese and some apples. Buttercup lay helpless beside the picnic, gagged and tied and blindfolded. Vincini held his long knife against her white throat. "Welcome," Vincini called when the man in black was almost upon them. The man in black stopped and surveyed the situation. "You've beaten my Turk," Vincini said. "It would seem so. And now it is down to you, and it is down to me." "So that would seem, too," the man in black said. "I understand completely what you are trying to do," the Sicilian said, "and I want it quite clear that I resent your behavior. You are trying to kidnap what I have rightfully stolen, and I think it quite ungentlemanly. Let me explain. There is nothing you can tell me I do not already know. You wish to keep the princess alive for ransom, whereas it is terribly important to me she stop breathing in the very near future. Has it occurred to you that I have gone to great effort and expense, as well as personal sacrifice, to reach this point?" the man in black replied. "And that if I fail now, I might get very angry? And if she stops breathing in the very near future, it is entirely possible that you will catch the same fatal illness? I have no doubt you could kill me. However, has it occurred to you that if you did that, neither of us would get what we want? You having lost your ransom item, me my life." "We are at an impasse, then," the man in black said. "I fear so," said the Sicilian. "I cannot compete with you physically, and you are no match for my brains. You are that smart. There are no words to contain all my wisdom. I am so cunning, crafty, and clever, so filled with deceit, guile, and chicanery, as diabolical as I am vulpine, as tricky as I am untrustworthy. Well, I told you there were not words invented yet to explain how great my brain is." "In that case," said the man in black, "I challenge you to a battle of wits." Vincini had to smile. "For the princess?" "Correct." "I accept," cried Vincini. "Begin the battle." "Pour the wine," said the man in black. Vincini filled the 2 goblets with deep red liquid. The man in black pulled from his dark clothing a small packet and handed it to the hunchback. "Open it and inhale, but be careful not to touch." Vincini took the packet and followed instructions. "I smell nothing." The man in black took the packet again. "What you do not smell is called iocane powder. It is odorless, tasteless, dissolves immediately in any kind of liquid. It also happens to be the deadliest poison known to man." The man in black reached down for the goblets. He took them and turned away. Vincini cackled aloud in anticipation. The man in black busied himself a long moment. Then he turned again, and with a goblet in each hand. Very carefully he put the goblet in his right hand in front of Vincini, and put the goblet in his left hand across the kerchief from the hunchback. He sat down in front of the left-hand goblet, and dropped the empty iocane packet by the cheese. "Your guess," he said. "Where's the poison?" guess, Vincini cried. I don't guess. I think. I ponder. I deduce. Then I decide. But I never guess. The battle of wits has begun, said the man in black. It ends when you decide, and we drink the wine and find out who is right and who is dead. We both drink, need I add, and swallow, naturally, at precisely the same time. It's all so simple, said the hunchback. All I have to do is deduce from what I know of you, the way your mind works. Are you the kind of man who would put the poison into his own glass, or into the glass of his enemy? You're stalling, said the man in black. You've beaten my Turk, which means you are exceptionally strong, and exceptionally strong men are convinced that they are too powerful ever to die, too powerful even for iocane poison, so you could have put it in your cup, trusting on your strength to save you. Thus I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. But you also bested my Spaniard, which means you must have studied, because he studied many years for his excellence. And if you can study, you are clearly more than simply strong. You are aware of how mortal we all are, and you do not wish to die, so you would have kept the poison as far from yourself as possible. Therefore I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me. You're just trying to make me give something away with all this chatter, said the man in black angrily. Well, it won't work. You'll learn nothing from me. That I promise you. I have already learned everything from you, said the Sicilian. I know where the poison is. Only a genius could have deduced as much. How fortunate for me that I happen to be one, said the hunchback, growing more and more amused now. Shall we drink, then? Pick, choose. Quit dragging it out. You don't know. You couldn't know. The Sicilian only smiled at the outburst. Then a strange look crossed his features as he pointed off behind the man in black. What in the world can that be? He asked. The man in black turned around and looked. I don't see anything. Oh, well, I could have sworn I saw something. No matter. The Sicilian began to laugh. I don't understand what's so funny, said the man in black. Tell you in a minute, said the hunchback. But first let's drink. And he picked up his own wine goblet. The man in black picked up the one in front of him. They drank. You guessed wrong, said the man in black. You only think I guessed wrong, said the Sicilian, his laughter ringing louder. That's what's so funny. I switched glasses when your back was turned, fool. You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia, but only slightly less well known is this. Never go in against a Sicilian when death is on the line. He was quite cheery until the iocane powder took effect. The man in black stepped quickly over the corpse, then roughly ripped the blindfold from the princess's eyes. I heard everything that happened, Buttercup began, and then she said, oh, because she had never been next to a dead man before. You killed him, she whispered finally. I let him die laughing, said the man in black. Pray I do as much for you. He lifted her, slashed her bonds away, put her on her feet. To think, she murmured, all that time it was your cup that was poison. They were both poison, said the man in black. I spent the last 2 years building up an immunity to iocane powder. Buttercup looked at him. He was terrifying to her, masked and hooded and dangerous. His voice was strained, rough. Who are you? She asked. I'm no one to be trifled with, replied the man in black. That is all you ever need know. And with that he yanked her upright. They proceeded along the mountain path to an open space. The man in black stopped then. There were a million stars fighting for prominence, and for a moment he seemed to be intent on nothing less than studying them all, as Buttercup watched his eyes flick from constellation to constellation behind his mask. Then, with no warning, he spun off the path, heading into wild terrain, pulling her behind him. She tumbled. He pulled her to his feet. Again she fell. Again he righted her. I cannot move this quickly. You can, and you will, or you will suffer greatly. Do you think I could make you suffer greatly? Buttercup nodded. Then run, cried the man in black, and he broke into a run himself, flying across the rocks in the moonlight, pulling the princess behind him. Where do you take me? Buttercup gasped when he gave her a chance to rest. Surely even someone as arrogant as you cannot expect me to give an answer. It does not matter if you tell me or not. He will find you. He, Highness? Prince Humperdinck. There is no greater hunter. He can track a falcon on a cloudy day. He can find you. You have confidence that your dearest love will save you, do you? I never said he was my dearest love, and yes, he will save me. That I know. You admit to me that you do not love your husband-to-be. Fancy, an honest woman. You're a rare specimen, Highness. The prince and I have never from the beginning lied to each other. He knows I do not love him. Are not capable of love is what you mean. I am very capable of love, Buttercup said. I have loved more deeply than a killer like yourself can possibly imagine. He slapped her. That is the penalty for lying, Highness. But I spoke the truth. I did. Buttercup saw his hand rise a second time, so she stopped quickly, fell dead silent. Then they began to run again. It was close to dawn when they first saw the Armada. They were running along the edge of a towering ravine. When they stopped, Buttercup sank down to rest. The man in black stood silent over her. "Your love comes, not alone," he said then. The man in black pointed back the way they had come. Buttercup stared, and as she did, the waters of Florin Channel seemed as filled with light as the sky was filled with stars. "He must have ordered every ship in Florin after you," the man in black said. "I wonder, will he stay in one group, or will he divide, some to search the coastline, some to follow your path on land? What do you think?" "I only know he will find me, and if you have not given me my freedom first, he will not treat you gently. May I please tell you something, Highness? You're very cold." "I'm not. Very cold and very young, and if you live, I think you'll turn to hoarfrost." "Why do you pick at me? I have come to terms with my life, and that is my affair. I am not cold, I swear, but I have decided certain things. It is best for me to ignore emotion. I have not been happy dealing with it." "I loved once," Buttercup said after a moment. "It worked out badly." "Another rich man?" "Yes, he left you for a richer woman." "No, poor, and it killed him." "Were you sorry? Did you feel pain?" "Admit that you felt nothing." "Do not mock my grief. I died that day." The Armada began to fire signal cannons. The explosions echoed through the mountains. The man in black stared as the ships began to change formation. And while he was watching the ships, Buttercup shoved him with all her strength remaining. For a moment the man in black teetered at the ravine edge. His arms spun like windmills fighting for balance. They swung and gripped the air, and then he began to slide. Down went the man in black, stumbling and torn and reaching out to stop his descent, but the ravine was too steep, and nothing could be done. Buttercup stared at what she had done. Finally he rested far below, silent and without motion. "You can die too, for all I care," she said, and then she turned away. Words followed her, whispered from far, weak and warm and familiar. "As you wish." Dawn in the mountains. Buttercup turned back to the source of the sound and stared down, as in the first light the man in black struggled to remove his mask. "Oh, my sweet Wesley," Buttercup said, "what have I done to you now?" From the bottom of the ravine there came only silence. Buttercup hesitated not for a moment. Down she went after him. She fell fast and she fell hard, but that did not matter, since she would have gladly dropped 1,000 feet onto a bed of nails if Wesley had been waiting at the bottom. Tossed and spinning, crashing, torn, all out of control, she rolled and twisted and plunged, cartwheeling toward what was left of her beloved. At this point in the story, my wife wants it known that she feels violently cheated not being allowed the scene of reconciliation on the ravine floor between the lovers. My reply to her is simply this. A, each of God's beings, from the lowliest on up, is entitled to at least a few moments of genuine privacy. B, what actually was spoken, while moving enough to those involved at the actual time, flattens like toothpaste when transferred to paper for later reading. My dove, my only, bliss, bliss, etc., etc., etc. C, nothing of importance in an expository way was related, because every time Buttercup began, "Tell me about yourself," Wesley quickly cut her off with, "Later, beloved, now's not the time." So he and Buttercup fled along, both of them very much aware that gigantic forces were following behind them, and undoubtedly cutting into their lead. Wesley, naturally enough, was considerably ahead of Buttercup with the realization that they were heading into the fire swamp. Whether it was a touch of sulfur riding a breeze or a flick of yellow flame, far ahead in the daylight, he could not say for sure. With any luck at all, he said, we should soon be safely in the fire swamp. Buttercup heard his speech, of course, but she did not take it well. Buttercup stared at the fire swamp. As a child, she had once spent an entire nightmared year convinced that she was going to die there. Now she could not move another step. The giant trees blackened the ground ahead of her. From every part came the sudden flames. "You cannot ask it of me," she said. "I must. I once dreamed I would die here. So did I. So did we all. Were you 8 that year?" "I was. 8, 6, I can't remember. Wesley took her hand. She could not move. "Must we?" Wesley took her in his arms. "Child, sweet child, I have a knife. I have a sword. I did not come across the world to lose you now." Buttercup was searching somewhere for a sufficiency of courage. Evidently, she found it in his eyes. End of Side 2.